and welcome to this week's GRIDGIRL Vodcast with me, Helena, and bringing you all the latest kind of around a lot of news that have been going on recently in F1. So today we'll be having a little look around obviously Carey stepping away from F1, from being the CEO of F1, and Stefano Domenicali coming in. We'll also be having a chat about the changeover at Williams and now the kind of acting team principal Simon Roberts being in there. And we'll also be bringing you the latest in paddock news. So let's get started. So the major bit of paddock news this week, and pretty much the only paddock news this week, very much came from Honda and Red Bull. So Honda announced literally a few days ago that they will be leaving the partnership that they currently have with Red Bull at the end of 2021. So this will be at the end of the season before the new kind of rules come into play in 2022. This means that obviously Red Bull and AlphaTauri will now be looking for new engine suppliers. A lot of speculation around Honda kind of leaving. Honda have said, the car industry's changed a lot and they want to move away from kind of, non-kind of green engines. So they're looking to pursue kind of being more carbon neutral by 2050, and kind of being in F1 at the minute with the hybrid engines is not necessarily getting them to that point. It's not to say that they won't be back in the future, but I think until F1 becomes kind of, a carbon neutral sport, I think Honda have decided to take that step away. And, that's something that's, quite big really. Sometimes I think we don't actually look at the kind of social responsibility that we have within the sport. Obviously we are driving cars around at, hundreds of miles an hour, not really actually thinking about the kind of climate impact that the sport has, not just in terms of driving cars for, between 50 and kind of 70 laps a week, but also the getting everyone there, moving, the logistics. We probably don't take that into account. F1 is a global sport, it travels all over the world, and something that actually maybe we do need to reflect on as a sport. Red Bull have been fairly quiet. Obviously they have said that Honda has played a big role in some of the teams, and that is both Red Bull and AlphaTauri's kind of podiums and success that they've had over the past few years. But they've not really said anything about what they are going to do going forward. Christine Horner was stated in an interview the other week kind of saying, we look forward to embarking on a new era of innovation, development and success. But what does that actually mean for Red Bull? Now, if we remember a few years ago, Red Bull actually decided that they were going to leave Renault over having this Honda engine, and things became quite bitter really towards the end. It was also kind of around the time that Daniel Ricciardo moved to Red Bull, so moved from Red Bull even. And yeah, it's like, can you really go back to Renault for an engine? Unfortunately, they may have to, because Renault currently supply the least engines on the grid. So the rule kind of is in F1 that if you are not a kind of works team, that you have to buy an engine off somebody else. So we see this, the best example is Racing Point. So they buy their engine off Mercedes. They are a customer to the Mercedes team. Now the options for Red Bull basically would be the Ferrari engine, which nobody's really loving at the minute. Let's be honest, pretty much every Ferrari is at the back of the grid, so I don't really feel like they would want to do that. Mercedes, who are their biggest rival. Now, next year we've got Mercedes in the Mercedes cars, obviously. We've got them in McLarens next year. We also have them, I think, in a Williams car as well, potentially. I think they're still designing their engines, but I know they have been working a little bit with Mercedes. But it's one of those, it's like, you know, the majority of the cars in the top are going to be Mercedes engines. So do you want to do that? Now, if they can't reach a deal, it does mean that Renault would have to supply an engine for Red Bull. Now, Renault currently have engines for themselves and for McLaren. Obviously, they're going to lose McLaren as a customer next year. And, you know, I don't think it would be a bad thing for Red Bull to be back in a Renault engine. And, you know, when you actually look back on Red Bull's kind of history within the sport, you know, they haven't been in the sport that long. I think they've been in the sport maybe about 15 years. And, you know, they had a lot of success with Renault. Their 4 world championships came from a Renault engine. And, you know, when you put that into perspective, it's a big thing. All the success that they had with Sebastian Vettel, with Daniel Ricciardo, you know, Daniel Ricciardo ended up going to Renault. And, you know, it just kind of shows that, you know, it's maybe not so easy to write off the Renault engine. If you actually look at McLaren this year, McLaren are doing fantastically well with the Renault engine, actually doing better than the Works team, if we're honest. And, you know, it wouldn't be a bad thing, actually, I don't think. I think if you end up with them in a Mercedes engine, having a Mercedes engine, it's just going to become like literally the first 5 cars on the grid, oh, they're all doing well, yeah, that's because they've all got Mercedes engines. And I don't know whether that would be a good thing for the sport or a bad thing for the sport. I also don't think, you know, we've heard from Mattia Binotto, who's basically said that, you know, Ferrari's not going to improve next year, so it is going to be Red Bull, really, that will be the biggest rivals to Mercedes. So, yeah, I think, you know, a Renault engine wouldn't be a bad thing. Obviously, then that does lead to, well, will Max stay if there's a Renault engine? I think he will. I don't think that's going to massively change. I think he's quite happy at Red Bull. He is the man at Red Bull. So I don't think they would lose anything. You know, and it's just going to be interesting to see how it pans out. I think if we're realistic, we're going to be seeing a Renault engine in Red Bull. I don't think Mercedes would want to sell their engine to their biggest competitor. I think if they did, it would be for a hefty price. And yeah, I also don't see Red Bull wanting a Ferrari engine at the minute. So yeah, let's just see what happens over the next few weeks. So a story that's dominated over the past few weeks is the kind of changing of the guard and Chase Carey stepping down as Formula One CEO. Now, Chase Carey came in probably, I think, a number of years ago, actually, a couple of years ago, to kind of run Formula One when Liberty Media took over and bought, you know, F1 as the sport. At the time, it definitely made sense. He is a very good corporate businessman. Chase Carey's worked for the Murdochs, he worked for News Corporation for a long time. He understands the corporate world very well, and I think that was kind of why they brought him in for a bit. I think what Liberty needed to do was establish how the sport needed to be run, to be, you know, financially responsible in some aspects, and, you know, to get the most for the teams and for the sport as a whole. And I think it does kind of work well. And, you know, I think it was always kind of a temporary appointment, so it was never going to be long term. He's done, about 3 years in the role. And I think he was ready to kind of go, do you know what, we've worked out who we need to put in. So he brought a lot of stability. You know, he's done quite well under the coronavirus, really, because F1 has been a struggle to get to run under, coronavirus regulations. We've been lucky that only one driver has had it, and not really as a result of being at a race. They've made a COVID-secure environment, a COVID-secure bubble, and, he's run it really well so that the corporation can actually still run races. Like, I honestly didn't think when we cancelled, Australia that, potentially, when it got to kind of May time, that we'd be looking at having 10 races, let alone, I think we're on 17, 18 we're going to be having now this season. And, that's a mean feat to manage. But you can kind of tell that, he'll still be around in F1. He's going to be a non-executive chairman, I think, staying within Liberty Group. So he'll still be kind of in the background, just not at the forefront so much. And, it begged the question, who would replace Chase Carey? Now, you can definitely see that they needed someone who knew the sport, because obviously Chase's background is not in F1. So they needed somebody who could understand the sport, but understand the corporate side of it. And actually bringing in Stefano Domenicali actually made a lot of sense, because he has been a big figure within the F1 community, especially within Ferrari, but also has that background. Now, when you look at Stefano's kind of CV, he comes from a family where he is the son of a banker, so he comes from a family of kind of corporate experience. He has been massive within F1. He actually, when he joined Ferrari, worked in the finance department, and would often get involved with stuff like race directing, especially at Mugello, where we've been recently, which is obviously a Ferrari-owned track. He has a wealth of experience, really. Actually, when you look at how he came up through the ranks in Ferrari, so obviously he worked in the finance department. He then had a brief stint as a logistics manager. He then became the team's kind of sporting director in 2002. And, he then took the role of, team principal and director around 2008. And, that's a big thing to, rise up through the ranks of Ferrari. Ferrari are known to be an incredibly tough team to work for. They are the oldest team in the sport. They hold a lot of respect within the community. They also are, they have a big corporate presence. Ferrari is a massive brand, and to be head of, the racing team is a big thing. And you are held to account in Italy if you are the head of Ferrari. Certainly, you're in for a bumpy ride if you're the head of Ferrari. I mean, look at Mattia Binotto at the moment. He's having a tough time, and if you look at the Italian press, he's getting slated left, right and centre. The Tifosi are not ones to kind of mince their words. So, he did well, and under him, they did have relative success. They didn't win a lot, but, they were in a time where there was nobody really dominating the sport at the time when he took over. So obviously, Michael had finished at that point. He'd semi-retired, obviously, and then came back for a bit, but Michael was kind of gone. Lewis had won, I think, maybe one world title at that point. And we were kind of coming into the brief stint of Sebastian Vettel. Red Bull were really strong at that point, so not to say that Ferrari were weak, but it was tight. It wasn't a runaway championship like it is now. We were under very different rules then, obviously with different regulation, different engines, so it was very different. And he they won, they did quite well. They finished, within the top 3 quite a lot. They also saw, Fernando Alonso do quite well in his career there. They also, they had strong drivers. They had Fernando Alonso, Felipe Massa, and, they're not 2 drivers to be sniffed at. They're, incredibly talented drivers. I know Felipe Massa never won a title, but he was so close to winning a title. Literally, that infamous moment, that Glock. Yeah, that literally was the championship gone for Felipe Massa in one place. It was points that, came between them. And actually, he was a very good team principal. We did see him leave, so he resigned as the team principal in 2014, so it was quite a while ago actually when you think about it. In my head I always think, it was only yesterday, but I forget that actually, he's been doing other things since then. So he was then, hired by Audi and was appointed as the kind of head of the FIA single-seater commission, so he's had other appointments since. With becoming the head of Formula One, like the CEO, you have to have been away from Formula One as a sport for at least 2 years. So, he's done that. And then in 2016, he was appointed CEO of Lamborghini, and he's been there ever since. And he's had a lot of success running Lamborghini as a company. And that kind of shows his tenacity and, how he can change and how he can, put his business background, he's got a degree in business administration, using that business background and putting it to use in a different way. He's still fairly young, I'd say. He's 55, but he's young in F1 terms. He has had a lot of success over the years, and he's a very well-liked guy within the F1 community. Nobody really has a bad word to say about Stefano. He, regularly appears on, the Channel 4 coverage of F1. He is a very likeable guy. He's very fair. He understands his trade really well and understands the corporate side really well. And I actually think from Liberty, this was a very clever appointment. Bringing in somebody who is well respected, well liked, understands the sports and the regulations, which means he can join up with the FIA a bit more. He also understands corporate business, which then means he can understand what teams need and how we keep it as a, financially responsible sport. And he's had that experience in both sides. So it was a very good appointment by Liberty, and definitely one not to be sniffed at. And I think actually I'm very much looking forward to seeing Stefano, take the reins. I think it'll be fantastic. And, it's really great to see him back in the sport for sure. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Williams this week. Obviously, we saw the Williams family sell, Williams Racing, probably about a few weeks ago now, maybe about a month ago. And, it was very much that Drolton still wanted the Williams family to kind of, be part of the team. Definitely wanted Claire to still be, the team principal. I know she's deputy team principal, but let's be honest, she is the team principal. And, we got the shock announcement just before, I think it was Mugello, that, Claire was stepping down. And it was sent shockwaves through the F1 community. I personally think Claire, is an incredible woman within the sport. She does a lot to support women within the sport. I know, admittedly, she is where she is because of her name, but she is a very intelligent woman. She worked her way up the ranks. She was a press secretary for Williams Racing for a long time. She's then sat on kind of the board. She then became the deputy team principal. And, you know, she's done a lot. She is, you know, incredibly intelligent. She actually got a degree in politics, so representing us women who have degrees in politics as well. But yeah, she was a breath of fresh air within the sport, and she always spoke very honestly. She's very true to her word. And, you know, it's also sad on the side of, you know, Frank Williams no longer being in the paddock. Obviously, I know he is getting older, and, you know, it is harder for him to be at every race and to come and, you know, tour the world like you do with F1, but, you know, he has had so much success within the sport, and he's been in the sport an incredibly long time, and under his management, Williams have been one of the most successful teams within the sport. You know, they rival Ferrari, and Ferrari have got an extra, like, 20 years on Williams. And, you know, it just shows that for someone who was a self-starter, he really built a team up to, you know, be one of the best teams, and they are still one of the best teams in the sport. I know they're not doing well at the minute, but they're making a phenomenal comeback, and that's been under Claire's management. You know, this year, George Russell's doing fantastically well. I know he's still not scored a point, it's a bit of a joke, but, you know, they've actually done really well. And it's sad to see the Williams family go, but what does that now mean for F1? What does that mean for Williams Racing, that are now owned by Jolton? Well, Jolton have said, you know, we wanted to keep Claire, but we understand why she wants to go. Claire openly admitted in her final interview that she actually needed to spend some time with her family. You know, she's got young kids. I think her son's only about 3 or 4 years old, and she's not been around a lot. F1 takes a massive proportion of your time throughout the year, and it shows, it really does show. So yeah, it was a shock, but understandable move for the Williams family. So what that means now is that Simon Roberts is now the acting team principal of Williams Racing. And some of you might not know a lot about Simon Roberts, and frankly, I really didn't either. Now, he has been with the team for a long time. He's been managing a lot of the technical operations within the F1 team. And, you know, he joined the Williams team kind of earlier this year as the managing director, Formula One, and he basically looks after technical operations and planning functioning. So a lot of the major stuff, basically, that kind of happens within the team. And, you know, it was a bit like, well, who is he? What's he done? So we had a little read into him. He, you know, has been in F1 for quite a long time, actually. He started his career in 2003. So he's been in the sport a long time, but obviously very quietly in the background. And as you can see, the orange colours in the background, he was with McLaren as their kind of director of operations and kind of like general manager there. He also went to Force India, which is now obviously Racing Point for a while, as Chief Operating Officer there to kind of help the team and support them there, kind of on like a bit of a loan really. But the majority of his time has been served with McLaren. He's dealt majorly with kind of operations within the team, and that's his background. So I think he definitely understands the team more. He took over a lot of responsibility kind of late in his career with McLaren over kind of engineering and factory operations, which is something that probably Williams have struggled with. So I think it made sense for Williams to bring him in when they did this year, because that was kind of their downfall the year before. You know, we look at the debacle they had in Barcelona testing, where the car wasn't even ready for testing until 3 days in, and you only get like a limited amount of days testing. Like, it's not even like 2 weeks and you've missed 3 days. So yeah, I think it made sense. Do I think he'll stay? I'm not sure. We're yet to see. You know, he is there temporarily. He has openly said he's there temporarily. Who would come to manage Williams? That is the question. So if it's not Simon Roberts, who would it be? And frankly, I'm not really sure that Williams have another option unless they bring somebody new in, or unless they bring somebody young in, like in their kind of like 30s. I was going to say like Toto Wolff young, and then I forget that Toto Wolff is not as young as I think he is. So yeah, I think they need somebody probably who knows the sport well, but is fairly young in F1 terms, who can deal with the pressure of managing the team. You know, Claire stated in her leaving interview, you know, the team principal role is almost a bit outdated. It's a massive responsibility. And Toto Wolff has also been quoted saying that recently, and I think that shows that actually there's a lot of pressure that goes on behind the scenes that we don't see as fans. But I think it'll be interesting to see who Dalton actually appoint to be, you know, the team principal at Williams Racing. And, you know, it'd be nice to see what comes out of it over the next, you know, few years. Williams, as I said, have done fantastically well this year, considering they were miles behind the back of the grid. You know, they're not just at the back of the grid, they were like 3 laps behind the back of the grid. And, you know, it's nice to see, you know, George is thriving. He's fighting for Q2. He's, you know, last weekend was 13th, qualified 13th. You know, he's getting there. You know, they're doing better than some of the likes of Alfa Romeo and Haas, who were 4th in their first year of F1. And I think that shows how F1 can be such a winning sport and a cruel sport at the same time, because, you know, you look at Haas, they were 4th, they're now pretty much dead last on the grid if they actually finish a race. And, you know, I think that just kind of shows that F1 can be a cruel sport, and, you know, as David Coulthard always says, it's in the hands of the racing gods, and they can be cruel. And I actually hope that, although it's sad to see the Williams family leave, that this will actually be a new era for them, and that what is starting to come out of the, you know, the wreckage that was the past couple of years, I hope they actually flourish back to where they were. You know, Claire came 3rd one year in the Constructors' Championship, and that says a lot. You know, they were a team that were 3rd, and it'd be nice to see them back up the top. And I think the more teams that we can get back there means it's not just going to be a Mercedes 1-2 every weekend. It means that actually we would get more kind of exciting championships with different winners. Because at the minute it is the Hamilton show for sure, and even if we take them out of it, it's still a Mercedes show. And it'd just be nice to see some different faces on that podium. And although Monza was, you know, a bit of a weird race, it was probably one of the most exciting races I've watched in years, and meant that, you know what, yeah, you don't want races like that every weekend, but it'd be nice to see a few more of those. And I think if we see the resurgence of Williams, that could be a more regular thing. So that's all from this week's podcast. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and like, and feel free to leave a comment on the new format. Let me know if you like it. Next week, obviously, we'll be back with racing, so you know, I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about. Hopefully there'll be a bit more news as well. We'll be back at my one of my favourite tracks next week, so we'll be in Germany at the Nürburgring. it's not quite my favourite one. I do prefer Hockenheim, but we'll keep that stum for now. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing some racing next weekend. I think we've got a few back-to-backs as well. So yeah, I will see you in 8 weeks' time.